Yeah, welcome to SMX Insider as the SuperMotocross World Championship and Monster Energy AMA Supercross heads to Ford Field in Detroit this Saturday afternoon. We're the Jasons, Weigandt, and Thomas, your insiders. I don't know what surprises are left here. It's been a wild 2-week run for the championship in both classes, JT. We have to talk about Malcolm Stewart's unbelievable win. That's crazy for him, but I also think symbolic of how unpredictable the last couple of race days have been.
You're exactly right. And it's been the highest of highs and the lowest of lows for several riders. And we're going through it right now. But speaking of Malcolm Stewart, I wondered, he had that huge crash in Glendale years ago. And I wondered if he would ever bounce back from that and get the win, because he was on pace to win that night. And it looked less and less likely as the years have gone on, but no more. We're never going to have to face that question again. From here on out, he's always going to be a Monster Energy Supercross winner. And that has to be such a load off of his mind, because let's face it, it hasn't been the best of runs over the last few years, but he'll always have that box check moving forward.
Oh, yeah. I want an emotional way to do it in front of the home fans. And his brother James was with us on the TV broadcast, which made it even better.
You rode great, Malcolm. You were killing those guys through the whoops. Seems like you kind of picked up that line, that double, and going triple in the whoops. But, I mean, just explain to us, how did this thing happen?
Big bro, you've done this a long time, racing Daytona, Jacksonville, and something about that hometown crowd, buddy. I don't know if they were twisting the throttle for me, because for a split second, I was like, all right, I need to get this done. I was feeling really good, and hey, you know what? Stewart is back in the whoop, y'all.
Yeah, so expect the unexpected going into Detroit. It would be nice to get a little return to normalcy. We love the wild win for Malcolm Stewart, but hopefully everyone this weekend stabilizes a bit. So we have a lot to talk about on this show. Is the championship now a Sexton v. Webb battle? What about 250 East and everything we saw in their opener? What does that mean for round two? Lots to discuss as we get ready to head to Michigan. I'm so pumped we got this for the big interview. The story maybe of the season so far. I don't know, maybe by the end of 2025, it'll still be the best story of this season. Malcolm Stewart, that long-awaited first win. We're lucky. We're talking to you a little later in the week. I know you've done a lot of media so far. Has it seemed any different, felt any different? You said on Saturday by Monday morning it was just going to be back to work. Has it felt that way?
It's kind of funny that you say that. Monday morning I did not want to ride, but Alden snapped it. Alden was like, "No, we're getting back to it on the track," and we went back and got to work. But it's starting to sink in a little bit. Of course, now I'm finally catching up with some text messages and stuff like that. It's pretty cool, man. There's so much weight off my shoulders. You've been grinding for this moment for a very long time for myself and my whole family. And I felt like once we finally came across that checkered flag, it was like, okay, like this big relief. So it's a cool moment, and I'm just thankful that I finally got it done.
So let's go back. Let's go back 5 years, even further back. And the way I kind of saw your racing is kind of the same as all the good guys and all the normal spots. But in the whoops, you had this big advantage. And when the whoops were their toughest, you could really utilize that. And I felt like if you were going to get a win in this class, that's kind of the weapon you were going to wield. Does it feel like you're back there again where everything else is kind of equal, but I have this edge in the whoops, and if the track sets up, it's kind of on for me?
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, in the past history, it's like, oh, Stewart's always been fast in the whoops and things like that. And I kind of felt like there was that moment where the jumping line became faster. And then, so that advantage of me being that, third, fourth gear through the whoops, that challenging moment started to kind of fade away. And there was very few tracks that, in the past that I could be able to manage it. And that's just technology, the way our bikes are, the way the track develops. That's just racing, right? And so for the last 2 years, I started trying to focus more on jumping the whoops faster and things like that, because that's what happened at the end of the, start and end of the main events. And just for some reason, Tampa just lined up where the skimming line was actually faster through the whole day, the whole night, and I was just one of my advantages. I kind of kicked it back old school for myself and just made it happen, right? And to be honest with you, the reason why, I was so much faster through the whoops is because it was the section before that had the momentum that was in there. I was entering the whoops with just the amount of speed. I wasn't gaining any, like, I wasn't one of those times where the whoops were, if you didn't enter them, as racer, what you enter the whoop, the first whoop is, you can't gain speed. It's all about the momentum coming in. And I knew those whoops were really slick, and things like that. So I was like, if I can just enter them, the faster I can enter them, the better off I'll be, less on the throttle, easy through it, just power through. But it takes a lot of guts to do that too, right? So it's, again, at the end of the day, it all worked out in my favor. And when you're gelling with the track, it just makes things life easier.
After the win, it was cool to hear. So many people know your story, but your dad, I think, articulated it best. He said, I didn't even want him to race. I just wanted him to go fishing with me.
True statement.
Yeah. We all know, because we also knew your brother James, that you were the guy who had fun. Sometimes you wanted to race, sometimes you didn't, sometimes you were serious, sometimes you weren't. So now, over the age of 30, you get this win. Maybe you're even getting better. Does that contribute? You were not as serious as some 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds. You saw it firsthand how gnarly that can be for your brother. Is that actually helping you now that you weren't as serious way back then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so thankful where I'm at right now. Like, I don't want to go anything back like, oh, I wish I was more serious. Absolutely not. Like, I'm who I am today, and because of who I am today is what helped me out. Like, up and down, like, whether if I won the race or I didn't win this race, I looked at it as like, look how long you've been racing, right? Like, this is your 15th year of racing professionally. Yeah, you had some injuries. Yeah, you did win a championship. Like, there's also some great things and moments other besides just winning that one race. This was obviously one of the things I wanted in my lifetime, but if it wasn't going to make or break me, right? Like, I made a lot of great friends in this industry and things like that. This is just a cherry on top for myself and everybody is in this industry. And you and I both know, it's like, Jason, like, you know me, you know who Malcolm is on a personal level. And it's just that guy that's, if you ask me, you're like, if anybody knew who I was doing, what I was at, you're like, oh, what's Malcolm going to do when he's done? Oh, he's probably fishing somewhere. Like, that's the attitude. Like,
yep.
That's who I am. And I'm just, again, I'm blessed and thankful, where I am in my life. And I wouldn't have changed any moment where I'm at.
I think the main thing people want to know, does this carry into Detroit? Is this the beginning of something, or you want to put the brakes on that a little bit, still take it race by race? Or are you like, hey, now that I got one, what comes next?
Of course, like, now that I have one, the pressure's off. I don't have to worry about, that added weight pressure for 108 starts in my life. But no, of course, I want more. And all it takes is, everybody always told me, like, that first one's the hardest one. And let's just try to go out there and keep digging and see if we can keep earning some more. That's the goal, and that's the reason why I was doing this. And yeah, of course, I'm going to try to go into Detroit swinging as possible, as much as I can. But at the same time, like, I'm having a great time right now.
That's what it's all about for Malcolm Stewart. We love it, man. All right, get back to work. We'll see you Saturday. Time for SMX Facts. We bring on the staff statistician, the king of the calculator, Clinton Fowler. Of course, we're going to talk Malcolm Stewart's awesome storybook-style win at Tampa. Give us some data and things that we might not have realized with this one, because it certainly felt good. What does the data say?
Yeah, Weege, I mean, obviously a fan favorite win to see Malcolm in his home race get that victory. Couple of really cool stats, I think. By the number of starts, second longest in the history, 109 starts to get to his first one. Of course, your favorite Weege, Justin Brayton, at the top of that list at 131 starts to get to it in that amazing Daytona 2018 win. But it was technically longer for Malcolm to get there in terms of time. But JT, I think maybe even more important is the way he went about winning that. And compared to Chase Sexton, who he was chasing down for the good part of that main event, he was 32 seconds in total faster in just the whoop section. When you look at that, do you think it's going to be required to have a great whoop section for him to repeat this?
Yeah, I think that's the question. Is this a breakthrough? Is this something repeatable? And unless we're going to fundamentally change the way we've moved towards whoops, right? We've had this 9-whoop thing, and guys like Cooper Webb have found ways to rhythm through there. We haven't seen these whoops that are just brutal, and there's these gigantic gaps of time that are able to be made up. So I think it's going to be situational for Malcolm. He certainly gained a lot of confidence. He's going to believe he can do it. But I think unless he has that situation where he gets a start and he has an edge in a set of whoops like that, it's going to be really hard to repeat exactly how this went. I don't think he has the edge on the rest of the racetrack in a fashion to do it. And that's why his results have been on the backside of the top 10 for a while now, is because the rest of the track is not quite as good as it was in the whoops.
So you mentioned it's the longest wait in terms of time. Explain how that mark works and what you're talking about there, and then we can transition to, by the way, at 32 years old, this has to be pretty far up there as far as oldest winners, right?
It is indeed. So in the time, his first race in the 450s was back in 2014 at Daytona. There was some oddness there where was he a full-time rider or not with the team he was on at the time. So it ends up being nearly 12 years, whereas Justin Brayton had more starts, but it was actually only in 10 years. So a little bit of a technicality there. I'm sure JB will love to hear that one. And then to your point, Weege, he's the 5th oldest guy to go out and get this victory, which is just absolutely incredible. He slots in right behind it. You'll, of course, love this. John Dowd, who obviously coming from New England, I'm a big fan. He did that back in 1998. But he's the 5th oldest, but he's not the only oldest guy out there. Max and CJT in the 250s is also the 5th oldest to go out there and win at 31 years, just shy really of 32 years old. An impressive night for him. He goes out fastest qualifier. He wins the heat race and he wins the main event. Kind of like a no-hitter in baseball. I mean, really, really impressive night. Is it something we're going to see more of from Max and CJT?
Well, first, anybody who was racing when I was racing is pretty old. And you couple that with the fact he's racing a 250 still. That's incredible to think about that. But, as far as his performance, I think it's almost the opposite of what we saw from Malcolm. This felt like something he could do more of. Look at his qualifying. He was so quick. In the heat race, he was kind of methodical about how he went about things. In the main event, he just simply looked like the fastest guy. Now, you couple that with this is what we've talked about being such a deep 250 East field. So it's really hard to think he's just going to run away and do this week after week. But it didn't really feel like he did anything outlandish. He really felt like the best guy. He got the starts. He was the best in the whoops. All those things fell into place. So, it wouldn't shock me at all. He was really strong to start off the season in 2024. And here we are again. But he's almost like a better version of that 2024 Max Anstey, which sets up really nicely.
32, even better than 31 is kind of what we're learning here. Each year, these guys seem to get better. We'll see as Max and Malcolm roll on. Good data, Clinton. See you in Detroit.
You got it, Weege.
30-second board, hot topics in the sport. Quick shout out to NBC Sports Now. This is a different NBC Sports or NBC channel that only exists on a couple of platforms. You might need to look into seeing if you have it, because they will be playing a Supercross marathon this weekend. You can find that channel on Peacock, of course, but also the Roku channel, Pluto TV, Zumo, Samsung TV Plus, and more. I actually found I had it on my TV. I didn't even realize I did. So getting a marathon of 2024 races, this will really be cool. Just more eyeballs on SMX.
Yeah, I love my sleep, Weege, as you know. It takes a lot for me to stay up late. I think a Supercross marathon might do it. So we're going to put that to the test. But speaking of putting things to the test, I got to try out that new Alpine Stars, the Tech Air MX is actually what it's called. I know it's a mouthful, but this is a really cool innovation. They're just trying to keep riders safer. And this is something that in MotoGP racing on the street that they've been using for a long time inside their suits. And it's really made a big difference. And Chad Reed's been very instrumental in working through this new item. Austin Faulkner debuted it. I got to try it on. Now, if you watch the video, you're going to see me really react to that. It only just surprised me. It's not painful, anything like that. Not anything. I just didn't expect it to be so explosive so quickly. But when you think about a crash, that's exactly what you want. It's going to absorb all of that injury. And in talking to Chad Reed about it, when you crash, there's so much noise and you don't even notice that it actually happened. You just don't really feel anything. You don't feel the impact of the ground. So this innovation, I think, is really important as we continue to move forward. And the speeds are only getting faster as the bikes improve, and this is a big step, Weege. All right, let's give this thing a try.
3, 2, 1, go. That was more violent than I was expecting, but I'm here, so hopefully this is going to keep a lot of people safe here in SuperMotocross.
So now let's move to the 250 East Division. Two riders who probably would like a mulligan would be RJ Hampshire and Levi Kitchen. Let's start with Kitchen. The result was not good, just barely inside the top 10. This is the guy who nearly won 250 West last year. But when you watched him ride, was he actually okay? Was it just a start and problems like that?
This was a worrying, confusing ride from Levi Kitchen for me. I didn't really see any flash. I didn't see him near the top in qualifying in the afternoon. He didn't have a good heat race, and he didn't have a good main event. And I heard that he was very sick for a very long time throughout January, and that kept him off the motorcycle for a lot longer than he wanted to be. Now, he kind of quieted that at the press conference, saying he thought it was kind of a reset and rejuvenated him a bit. I didn't see any of that on Saturday night. So of all these riders, all the chaos that went on, that was a concerning ride from Levi Kitchen because I didn't see any flash at all. Bad start, okay, but I need to see speed and the things that are going to tell me that he's going to be better down the line, and I simply didn't see it.
A little bit of the opposite for Hampshire, who had a major wrist problem, told everybody he had a major wrist problem, kind of tempered expectations due to lack of prep. But then he goes out and wins the heat, and he rode well in the main. He just got stuck on that tough block. I will say this, don't go off the track and you won't get stuck on the tough block. That's partially on him, but that was a much bigger penalty than you would have thought. But I was actually impressed with how well he rode, considering that's legit his lack of prep time.
Yeah, when you buy a ticket for the RJ Hampshire experience, you're going to get all of it. You're going to get really fast qualifying, you're going to get heat race wins, and you might get stuck on a tough block for 2 laps. Just have no idea what's going to happen when you jump onto that train. But completely opposite from Kitchen, I liked what I saw from his riding. He looked fast because I didn't think he was really ready yet. I didn't think he had ridden a lot, but those concerns for me are now gone. It's just avoiding the things that you're always hoping RJ can avoid, which is crashing and mistakes. And it doesn't take much, just one slide of the front tire to the left and he lands off the side of the track and his main event's completely ruined. So we'll see where it goes from here, but I'm much more optimistic about results coming from RJ than I was from what I saw from Levi.
Yeah, the Malcolm Stewart story at the top is definitely the headline and the feel-good probably of the year. I don't know if anyone's going to top that all season long, but that was so much the theme of what we saw at Tampa and what we're going to be seeing in Detroit, that perseverance. So Hampshire and Kitchen trying to bounce back, Tomac and Roczen trying to bounce back. Let's talk about a couple other riders who we also knew were grinding through with injuries. We got Cameron McAdoo riding with a torn ACL, Chance Hymas coming back early from ACL surgery, and then also Eli, who is clearly riding through pain. Impressive what these athletes are able to do.
Yeah, different scenarios. Hymas, he knew that this was going to be a struggle coming in for weeks, if not months from now. He knew Tampa was going to be tough. McAdoo's injury was just a week ago, and his head has probably been spinning ever since, trying to figure out how he's going to salvage 2025 in total. He came out swinging. What a performance from McAdoo. That theme of courage really showed up for all of them. They all found a way to fight through a lot of pain and a lot of uncertainty to maybe not get the best result, but get a result on Saturday night.
Time for the SMX medical update. Unfortunately, now the medical information that we need is starting to become backlogged. So we bring in Dr. Joe of the McGinley Clinic. And Dr. Joe, you were there in Tampa. There was a lot of riders going down, some we don't know the status of, and we'll try to cover a few of the big stories right here. Actually going to start with Cameron McAdoo, who told JT in the press conference on Friday he indeed did tear his ACL not that long ago, but here he is getting on the podium. How do you get that done?
Well, it was impressive first to see him out there, having an ACL tear, getting back out there and riding alone, and he finishes on the podium. I mean, that's just incredible. So, part of this is stability. Knee braces nowadays are great. They protect the knee. They keep them stable. Also, you have other ligaments in the knee. The ACL is the main stabilizer of the knee, but there are additional ligaments. And then the muscles, the quad muscles, hamstring muscles, they cross the knee, as well as the calf muscles. So there's other stabilizers besides the ACL. Good thing about motocross is, you're not out there running and cutting like a running back. With the bracing and stability on the bikes, you can push through it if it's the right situation and the pain's tolerable and you feel comfortable on the bike. But man, McAdoo just made that look impressive. You really couldn't tell he had an injury at all.
He got through one weekend, fantastic performance. But what would you suggest it looks like from here? Because the normal routine doesn't feel like that's going to be possible. Now, as an aside, I had this injury and I dealt with it, but I was like a caveman trying to sort through this thing. I didn't have the medical technology and expertise that you do, of course. So if you were guiding him, what are you telling him throughout the week to try to be his best on Saturdays, which is always the goal?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, ultimately, he's going to need this repaired, right? So, it's just a matter of when that's going to happen. It sounds like he's going to try to get through the Supercross season. So, part of that's going to be strengthening the muscles around the leg. Now, his time on the bike's probably going to be limited. Any additional crashes, if he puts that leg out, even with a knee brace on, he runs the risk of tearing other structures in the knee, such as the menisci, other ligaments around the knee. So that is going to be at risk. He's definitely, although he looked great out there, he's not the same with that torn ACL. So it's going to take a lot of, it's going to be challenging really on his part to get through the rest of the season and do it safely. But stabilizing that knee through the muscles and bracing is going to be his best bet.
Well, speaking of riding on one leg really and trying to compensate for the other side being injured, that's what Eli Tomac was up against, an all-time hero ride. It was eerily similar to what we saw at Denver 2 years ago with the Achilles tear when he hit his leg on the dirt in qualifying. But he did end up racing Tampa, not well below his normal standards. The press release after the race, Dr. Joe said a sprain high in his ankle and some bruising of his lower leg. How serious is that going forward, you think?
Well, yeah, I was there at the race. I saw it live, and just like everyone else in the crowd, as soon as he did that twist on his ankle, he reached down and grabbed his ankle. And the first thing I was thinking was Achilles. I was like, oh man, this is deja vu all over again with the Achilles. Fortunately, he was able to get back out there and rode in the main. Now, with the mechanism of injury, when you look back, I watched again in replay in slow motion, and he had a twisting injury, so it was an external rotation of that lower leg. So what can happen with a high ankle sprain? So that is the mechanism for high ankle sprain. High ankle sprain, by definition, is syndesmotic ligaments. They're the ligaments that hold the tibia and fibula together. It stabilizes the lower ankle. And when that twists, you can tear those ligaments. Now, with that twisting motion, you can also have other injuries. So there can be damage to further ligaments lower down in the ankle, but you can also get fractures. You can get broken bones at the level of the ankle, plus the higher up in the leg near the knee. You can also get a fracture because of that twisting injury.
We resume the 30-second board here. We're calling this moving day because there was so much movement in the 450 Monster Energy AMA Supercross point standings. We got a graphic we can show you here. I don't even know where to start. One thing I do want to mention is Hunter Lawrence. We had so much other news to report in this show. Let's not forget that he went out on the first lap of his heat race and not sure his status for Detroit. So that's double bad news for the Lawrence brothers. Obviously, he's drifted back in points. What else jumps out to you, JT?
Well, it's funny. When we were on the podium, I always try to kind of let the riders know what the point situations are. So if they want to add to their podium conversation about the points, they have that information. And when it was relayed back to me, I was like, wait, what? Because I would have believed anything at that point. You could have told me that Webb had the lead, Sexton had the lead. What I didn't think was that Jason Anderson was going to be third in points. But then when you stop and slow down and think about it, he's got 3 podiums in 5 races. So it doesn't sound that crazy, but the way racing has gone, and Roczen and Tomac and Jet, like you're like, wait, Anderson's third? Like, so it didn't make sense. This has been a crazy series. And I think the only thing we can expect is the unpredictability factor. That's, expect the unexpected is all we can do at this point.
Yeah, of that top 10, only Chase Sexton and Justin Barcia didn't move through the points and their ranking where they were coming into Tampa, which leads us to this. It's changed so quickly. Jet Lawrence out, Roczen finishes way back, Tomac finishes back, and are we already down to Cooper Webb versus Chase Sexton? And if we are, what do you think when you hear that?
It certainly felt that way leaving Tampa. I think everybody was like, well, and then there was 2. And we'll see what this week brings. But, if you remove Jet Lawrence from the picture last year, that's what it would have been. So these are still 2 of the usual suspects that we considered to be in this championship fight anyway. These 2 are very familiar with each other. They know their tendencies extremely well. And you think about a battle like Seattle last year in 2024, that may be what we're in store for, a battle between these 2 where they really lean into tracks that work for each other, because I believe that their skill sets and their strengths are very, very different, and they're both going to try to attack maybe the other rider's weakness.
And just as crazy, the 250 East division. So I think we knew Max Anstey would be good coming in. You said last week the only question you had about Anstey and his new teammate, Pierce Brown, was starts. Really bad news there for Brown, who crashed while leading. T5 vertebrae fracture. He's going to be out for a bit. So we send our thoughts to him. But they did answer the starts thing. And if Anstey keeps up like this, I think he's a known commodity. But do we know anything else about anybody else in that class?
Well, Anstey, he started really strong last year too, and he just couldn't find a way to stay up there. Now, this Yamaha, we know how potent that motorcycle has been for virtually everybody who's ridden it. Maybe this is the missing ingredient that he needed, and maybe with all that experience, and think about, he was racing a 250 in Supercross 15 years ago. So he's seen it and done it, but they look like, whether it's Bennick or, unfortunately, we know what happened with Pierce Brown, but he was lights out before that. And Max Anstey, all of them looked like they were the most prepared coming in. Like they looked like they had done their homework, and that's showing up on Saturdays. So, man, I don't know where you find the weak spot in Max Anstey's game right now, because he looked like he had it completely buttoned up on Saturday night.
We mentioned a lot of other contenders there. Let's not forget the 250 East champ, Tom Vial, who had an okay day. Just an okay day, hovering around the top 5. Nothing special, not as bad as what we mentioned with Kitchen and Hampshire, for example, or Pierce Brown. But yeah, the Anstey let everybody know that pretty much exactly as good as you'd expect him to be, he was that good at Tampa. So we switch back to the 450 class in such an unpredictable season. Really hard to figure out where it's going to go. Let's bring in 2 experts to try to drop some data and analysis.
All righty, James. Good to see you in Tampa. Incredible race. We got to start out by talking about your brother's incredible win. I saw on NXT Bets, $100 would have gotten $2,500 to return. Pretty good night for the family.
Coming into Tampa, I felt like just the way that track layout was, and considering how Malcolm usually rides on these hard packs, I thought he would do well. I got to see him a little bit on press day, and, let's be honest, like he needed some kind of spark. Well, he had a spark in Tampa. I think we were all kind of like, it's about time, but at the same time, we're like, man, like we were all kind of shocked. So just shows you how crazy the season is. I mean, we had the up and downs all day long with Eli Tomac being hurt, the fact that Jet Lawrence was out. There was so much going on, but Malcolm kind of saved the day for a lot of different reasons, and it was really amazing to watch, actually.
It sure was an amazing day to watch, and man, good point. Lots of ups and downs. Hey, we're moving forward this weekend to Detroit. Malcolm's coming in initially at a 9,500, 9,515. That would be one heck of a payout this weekend, so we'll have to see if he can make it happen in Detroit. He has finished second there in 2022. But let's talk about Detroit. We've had some disastrous weekends for riders up there, James. In 2022, we had Jason Anderson, Cooper Webb, and Chase Sexton all with DNFs for one reason or another. I mean, a tough collision between Webb and Sexton. In 2023, I mean, how can we forget Aaron Plessinger leading for 20 laps and then crashes, and then Sexton ends up docked for jumping on a red class flag. What is it about Detroit? Is it a track? Is it the cold temperatures in February? What is it, James?
Well, I can tell you from just, it's the type of soil it's unique for, an East Coast track, because it has a lot of ruts, but the ruts get hard and it just makes you uncomfortable. So any minute, like anything that's, if your suspension's just a tad off, well, when you go to Detroit and with those types of soil, it brings it out. And so I think what happened to Eli, things that he was coming off the injury, not being comfortable on the Yamaha, well, it showed his head. And then, a couple years prior, you had Jason Anderson landing, and you think of Detroit, you think of rutted East Coast, that ruts, a mile deep. Well, you have that, but then you also have that soil like Anaheim, where it's, hard and slippery. Jason landed off the finish line, washed his front end, went night-night. So it's just a really difficult place to get a bike set up, and usually you got to be, pretty comfortable being uncomfortable. And so, Detroit always brings it, whether it's 8 Mile and Eminem or, all these guys out there doing their thing. It's definitely a difficult racetrack to be a part of.
Well, we got two guys sitting 1-2 in the championship that are now the favorites heading in. You got Chase Sexton. He's looking at 101 on the odds. You got Cooper Webb. He's got 255 on odds as we're rolling into the weekend. These guys have had some hit or misses in Detroit. Cooper Webb's finishes in the 5 years he's been there, 13th, 2nd, 22nd, 2nd, and 4th. Like, pretty mixed bag, but he's had some success. Chase Sexton, 22nd. He won, and then he got 2nd. What do you think? Can these guys tame that dirt, tame the variable conditions? Which one of these guys looks good to you following Tampa Bay?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was kind of shocked to see Chase go down like he did. I heard maybe there were some issues with the bike, who knows? But still, that was the old school kind of Chase Sexton. So maybe it was a bike issue or whatnot. But when you're asking me, like, you look at the points, Chase, he extended his points lead. So in hindsight, it's a win, right? No, I feel like Cooper Webb, even though, he was a distance third, luckily Chase went down, he ended up 2nd. I feel like this is going to lead towards him just because, just that mindset. I think Cooper's in a good spot. And I really think, as they used to say in Friday, he had mind control over Debo. Well, I feel like Cooper Webb has that mind control, and you're going to see it play out this weekend. So if I'm leaning towards somebody, at number 2, he might be number 1 this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you can never count Cooper Webb out of it, especially on these East Coast tracks where he just is so good. Well, I'm looking forward to the battle. Guys, make sure you check out NXT Bets. Check the latest odds. They sometimes shift throughout the week, or your local sports book. And James, looking forward to watching Detroit this weekend, bud.
Same here. Good luck, guys.
All right. Always great to get that analysis on the show. But one rider that would be really hard to predict, statistically impossible to predict, would be Jason Anderson. You mentioned already, JT, 3 podiums in 5 rounds, but it is all over the map for the 21. I don't even know. He might be a title contender at this point. Maybe he already is.
Well, that was a topic of conversation going in to Glendale about where he'd had 2 podiums in 3 rounds. The last time he had done that was 2018, and he was the champion that year. And then, to be fair, he just laid an egg in Glendale. I don't really know what that was. I expected a lot more. But then if you frame out and look at the big picture, he's 3rd in points, 3 podiums, 5 rounds. Now the question is going to be, he's had 1 good, 1 bad, 1 good, 1 bad, 1 good. So what is Detroit? Is Detroit going to be bad again? But we've seen him be great in Detroit before. We have seen him put in solid rides at this round. So your guess is as good as mine. But if you're just thinking about the overall picture and you're Monster Energy Kawasaki and you lost Jorge Parado and you're hoping that Jason Anderson can show up in 2025 and give you something, he's doing that. 3 podiums, 3rd in points. We're going to Detroit. I think it's a really good setup for them overall if they take the big picture approach.
Okay, and one more element to analyze would be the track itself for Ford Field at Detroit. So here's the track map. What are you thinking?
Well, it's that same football style layout, long lanes, not so different than what we saw last week in Raymond James Stadium. And I think the interesting thing, if you've never been to this race, you think, well, it's in the Northeast, it's in the middle of winter, it's going to be crazy, tacky, ruddy. Not always the case here in Detroit. This dirt, it gets pretty dry and a little bit slippery for the main event. So it should be fine. It's just not going to be that Indianapolis, Minneapolis type scenario where it's a rut fest. That's not what this race is going to be about. Now, we do have one sand section that was a big topic of conversation in Tampa, but it's just one corner, so it shouldn't cause all of the issues that Tampa saw. But overall, pretty straightforward approach to this racetrack. I don't think it's going to be anything that the rider's going to have a challenge with. And once again, the starts are going to be critically important. So first lap positioning could tell the tale.
Well, that's it. I think we've given you everything you could possibly need to know before the Detroit round of Monster Energy Supercross, except when the race takes place and where you can watch it. This is a day race. I cannot stress that enough. This is a day race on Eastern time. So race day live qualifying coverage begins at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, and the racing begins at 3 o'clock Eastern. That's the similar schedule to what we had last year when we went to Detroit, if that makes it any more easily understood. It is a day race. There will be a re-air on Sunday afternoon on NBC at 2 o'clock Eastern. Of course, you can watch everything live on Peacock and or the SMX Video Pass if you live outside the United States. So that's when, and we know where, and we think we know a lot coming into this race. But if the last 2 weekends have shown us anything, JT, it doesn't matter what we thought we know, it changes in a hurry.
Yeah, honestly, everything we thought we knew about this series has been turned on its head. So we'll see where it goes from here. And I'm really excited to see what happens in this 250 East. I think we're just getting warmed up on the chaos over there.
Yes, last year the series started in Detroit and there was a crazy first turn crash, and we thought a bunch of riders were eliminated from title contention right there. And pretty much every one of those guys got back into title contention before long. So buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride all season long. We get ready for this Saturday in Detroit.